Welcome to Cybersecurity for Business. We're just going to give it a couple minutes to let people in, and then we'll get started. Welcome, welcome. Give it one more minute. Hopefully some of you are enjoying the beautiful weather. Maybe you can take this webinar outdoors and watch it virtually from outside because it is a beautiful day. But thank you for taking the time, whether you're inside or outside, to be part of this webinar. Obviously, this is something that could really impact small businesses. So by joining us today, it's really showing your dedication to your safety and your employees' safety and to your customers. So we appreciate you wanting to participate. Hey, I think we will get going. I'm Kristen Johnson. I'm the Director of Communications here at Better Business Bureau, serving Connecticut. And joining us today is Richard Holton. He's the owner and founder of Enterprise Computer LLC, a trusted IT service provider based in Clinton, Connecticut. Maybe some of you have even worked with him before. Today, we really want to have a conversation. We're going to have some slides just so you have visuals, something to look at, something in case you want to take notes. And not have to stare at our faces the whole hour. But we really do want to have this be a conversation. Enterprise Computer has 27 years of experience serving the community. And since its inception, the company has adapted to the rapidly changing landscape of technology, helping clients navigate the evolving challenges of internet security, data protection, and IT infrastructure management. Richard, you've really been around since before cybersecurity was really a thing, right?
Yep. I've been messing around with computers since like 80, 81. I started on a Commodore VIC-20, which had plastic. The whole thing was plastic, and you bought it at a store like Best Buy. Best Buy didn't even exist back then. I'm trying to think it was probably Crazy Eddie's that I bought it from.
So you've really witnessed firsthand the transformation of this industry, and unfortunately, the cybersecurity issues that have popped up in more recent decades.
Absolutely. More and more every day, and it's just like viruses. Virus protection came out in probably the early 80s. We started seeing like McAfee and Norton, and virus definition databases grew from hundreds of viruses to thousands of viruses to now hundreds of thousands of viruses. And now it's more than viruses. It's malware. It's, scanning for a lot of different variants.
Well, Rich and I hope that by the end of this presentation, our guests are really able to identify any sort of threats that could target their businesses, cybersecurity, and learn how to avoid those threats, and then also create a plan in case they have to recover from a cyber attack. Now, something that stuck out to me, Rich, the last time we spoke, you said it's not the size of your business that hackers are paying attention to. Can you explain that to me? And if they're not paying attention to the size of a business, what are they paying attention to?
Well, I guess the difference is whether it's a hacking group that's definitely trying to get into your business. I guess they know they already preconceive in their mind how big your business is and what they're trying to get. But a lot of hacking groups and a lot of hackers are doing it for fun, or they're doing it to see if they can get in, or they're doing it to see if they can get in and be malicious, or they hit pay dirt and get into some place they didn't know that they have money and they're willing to pay a ransom or something like that. So they're not necessarily caring what the data is, how big your business is. They just want to see if they can get in. And then depending on the type of hacker it is or the type of hacking group it is, then it becomes something that could lead to extortion or ransom. or just ruin your business because they want to script the data and just leave it.
And that's so important for our accredited businesses because so many of them are small businesses and may think, oh, I won't be impacted. They're not going to target me. My business is so small, but that's just not the case.
Well, I tell you, the simple thing that you can do is when you walk in tomorrow in your business, no matter what the business is, shut all the computers down and see how far you get. And if you don't get that far, that's how important the computers are to your business.
For sure, for sure. So here's a startling statistic. 68% of global organizations have experienced at least one cyber attack. And this year, the cost of cybercrime is forecasted to reach $9.5 trillion, with small businesses being a popular target. I have a feeling that does not surprise you, though.
No, not at all. I mean, the cybersecurity and the virus threats and the hacking threats, it's all part of the reason why your business should have a continuity plan. I mean, and aside from the things that happened with CrowdStrike and Microsoft a few months back, that wasn't even a virus. That was just something that was actually planned and actually got submitted as an update that went out to, thousands and thousands of businesses and caused in one day, I think Delta paid $1 billion in lost revenue just from one day of being out. Now, a business like my size, or maybe a smaller business, even a hair salon, can you imagine losing your appointments for the day, not knowing who's coming in, not knowing how to conduct business old school like you did before there was computers?
Mhm.
I know restaurant customers that they went 50 years of running their business without a point of sale system, and then they'll have one for 5 or 6 years and forget how to write things on a guest check, forget how to add, forget what menu prices are. It's crazy. You look at a small insurance company that maybe writes and they have 2 or 3 producers in the group, and all of a sudden they can't function, they can't look up their customers, they can't find things, financial or other documents that they may have to look up for a customer looking to make a claim.
Well, the first thing you're going to do is teach us to identify the threats. And I think the best way to do that is to share some real world experiences. You kind of already started doing that, but companies right here in Connecticut that have been targeted that have unfortunately fallen victim to these scams. Can you give us a couple of examples of what you've heard from your clients and talk about the impact that those attacks have had on their businesses?
Well, I'll tell you about a current scam that is the latest scam that's going on right now, and it's very interesting because it's using social engineering. They're trying to figure out how to get more information so they sound more legitimate when they do make their move on your company, so they appear like they're real and legitimate and that you want to use them. Sometimes you get a text message from an unknown number that says, you attempted to log into Gmail, check your account, and they put a link in there. And maybe that link doesn't go to Gmail. It goes to a Gmail like page that looks legit. You go put your username and password in. It doesn't work, but you don't have a second thought of it. But in the meantime, they've captured your username and password, and they go on to Gmail and lock you out of your own account and start reading your email and going through all the phases of gathering more intelligence to get into your company. Sometimes they won't even change your password. They'll just read your email to gain more insight as into a breadcrumb to getting into your organization, or send out emails to your customers on your behalf that you don't know when. And they're very smart. They'll send out an email to a large group of your contacts and then delete them from the sent folder so you don't realize they were sent from your account.
Oh, that's scary. We're going to go through the cybersecurity threats that are most common, and then you can give us examples that you've seen of each one of those.
Yep.
So do you want to read off what they are, or do you want me to read them?
Oh, no, you read all.
Okay. Business email compromise, phishing attacks, ransomware, insider threats, and data breaches. So let's start with phishing attacks. What are those?
Okay, so phishing attacks are where they literally fish for information. This is, they'll send you an email, looks legit. They're looking to get you to click on it or act on it, and usually there's always a sense of urgency involved with the email. Something you got to act now, or something like your password's going to expire. You need to act now, or your email box is full. You need to act now and click here right now, or even from a credit monitoring service. They'll fake like it's coming from there, and you'll click on it hoping to fix whatever the problem is.
And so what has been the impact that you've seen from these types of attacks?
Everything from someone actually gaining access to someone's bank account to someone gaining access to somebody's company and infecting them with ransomware and taking the whole network down. I mean,
Wow.
there once they have information's like gold, and they could just keep digging and keep trying to find more ways to get that.
And I find a lot of times with victims is once they've been hacked once, then the scammers know, those hackers know that they're potentially vulnerable to be attacked again.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've had people report issues to us and become frequent flyers, I'll call it. They'll not it's like people that lose data because they don't back up. They show up, they can't get their data back, and then you see them a couple of years later and they didn't take the advice to keep a backup, and they lose their data again. Thankfully, that's more on the consumer end and not totally on the business end for the most part. But people that don't have problems with things assume that a problem's not going to happen,
Mhm.
or it's not going to be them, or hey, I'm just a carpenter. What are they going to do with me? I'm just a single guy carpenter. But maybe that single guy carpenter or that single plumber that has just a secretary has $60,000 in accounts receivable or $100,000 in accounts receivable, and their QuickBooks file all of a sudden gets encrypted, and they don't have access to it anymore, so they can't go after collecting that money from their clients because they don't know what they owe.
And unfortunately, what we found at BBB is that those who think they're not vulnerable, that they're invulnerable, are likely the most vulnerable. We think that we're all so smart and we keep up and we know what's going on and it would never happen to us. And that's when it happens to us,
Absolutely.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
we're
And
going to keep, oh,
it happens all the time. And keep trudging along, because by the end of this, hopefully we're going to go over what we can do to help mitigate it, help identify things that are happening. And I can't stress enough, if it's something out of pocket that you don't expect to happen, get a second verification method, make a phone call, do something. I've seen payroll departments get emails from employees asking them to change their payroll deposit, and it looks totally benign, like, oh yeah, okay, Susie decided to change her checking account, so the payroll department accepts the email, changes the deposit, and the next week that employee doesn't get paid and the money goes into some account that Susie never authorized.
it happens so quickly. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll stop and we'll answer them. But we're going to keep going for now.
Yep.
Ransomware. Tell us about ransomware, the definition of it first, please.
Well, ransomware is software that they put into your network and they look to encrypt the data so that you no longer have access to it. They put a lock on it using a cipher, and the goal is they want you to pay money, and they want to give you a way to unlock the data that you have. And they actually they actually think they're doing you a favor by giving you access to your data back. But there's a really cruel version of ransomware where they encrypt your data, you pay the ransom, and you still don't get your data back because they had no intention of giving your data back to begin with.
A
It
lot of times you have to pay that ransom in crypto. Why cryptocurrency?
because it's crypto is very traceable but untraceable at the same time. It's something that they can hide behind, and the owner is not in most countries is not registering their crypto accounts or making themselves known that they're the owners of those accounts. Crypto is still, even though it's been around for a while, it's more and more regulated in the United States, but it's less and less regulated as you go outside the United States. And most hacking groups are not in the U.S. I'm sure there's tons. People who argue with me and say they're working from the U.S. through a VPN tunnel or something like that. But a lot of them are operating these crypto accounts outside the country. Once the money's out, they take the money out of the account, and even if the account number gets traced, that money's still not sitting in that account anymore, so it's gone.
Are there any other impacts?
Oh, of course, they had access to the system, so they could have made a copy of the data and downloaded it over your internet connection. Most hacking and ransomware attacks occur over the weekend when people are off, so you don't find out about it until Monday.
Wow.
You get back in the office and you turn on your computer and you're greeted with a message that says, if you'd like your data, please do this and don't call the authorities.
And you have an example of a healthcare organization being targeted by ransomware.
Yeah, you know, um, can't get into specifics, but yeah, I mean, and there are a lot of specific examples that have been in the news of large healthcare organizations who've gotten ransomware and made decisions that they were going to pay the ransom to get their data back, or made decisions that they were going to restore from backup. A lot of the big decisions come in on whether there's personal information. If there's not personal identifying information that's contained within the data and you have a backup, then guess what? You really didn't lose anything. That the hackers would deem something they can hold over your head. You know, if you got a lot of personal and financial information, the hackers did, then that becomes more of a concern of how you can get your data back from them, and it still doesn't prevent them from keeping a copy forever, and you don't even know it.
There are actual companies you can pay, though, instead of paying the ransom, that can try to get the data back for you, right? But then you're paying them instead of the
Uh,
ransom.
Of course, and I'll tell you what, last year, the FBI, in coordination with Homeland Security, I forget what the name of it, but they have a task force and they're actively on the internet looking for if they can see the signs of ransomware or see the signs of a possible breach in companies. And I've known companies that have gotten warnings from the FBI actually, or Homeland Security, stopping by their office and saying, "Hey, look, you're being hacked. You need to get a hold of your IT department." And these are things that we suggest you do to remediate it before it happens.
That's wild. That's wild. Okay, let's talk about insider threats now.
Insider threats are things like your employees. 83% of ransomware starts with an insider advantage.
Wow.
Somebody poorly trained or just, I've even run into people that highly skilled people that know what they're doing. They just get caught off balance, and they say yes to a message, or they say yes to a link, or something like that, and all of a sudden um they're in it, and they've gone down the rabbit hole and they've given up a password or whatever. I'll give you an example. Do you remember in Las Vegas, I think it was Bally's got hacked last year?
Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
familiar.
huge cyber attack, shut down the entire casino. It might not have been Bally's, it could have been the Luxor. I forget which one it was. But that whole hack started with somebody calling the IT department and pretending to be somebody else. And somebody gave up the administrator password over the phone without even authenticating who they were talking to.
So we really need to train our employees, but also keep the circle of those with access to that information rather relatively small, correct? That
Yes.
sensitive information.
Yes, and the thing is, you've got to verify things. You've got to make sure people are calling from known numbers. There's so many ways to spoof identity. I guess the higher the risk that you're talking about, the higher the level of identification you need to make with people to find out what's going on. It's not only email, it's text messages, it's it's voicemail messages, it's people calling and trying to get information. And they'll get little bits from one person and then call back and get a little bit from another person and call back and get a little bit from another person until they can put a profile together. And then they go to the person and they sound legitimate because they know all this other information. But
Interesting.
the casino one was really interesting because they just gave it up. I mean, and I don't know why a help desk would even have that level of information available to them to hand out.
So who should get access and who shouldn't?
Um, I think you have to talk to the IT department or whoever you're using for IT, and you have to tell them who the stakeholders are and who has to have access to data. And data needs to be segregated, so that way you know you can limit the access to who only needs access to it. You don't want to, the same reason you don't want your employees to have access to your payroll folder, or you don't want to have your employees have access to an HR folder or something like that. So you can have private areas where only the people that are stakeholders or have a reason to be there are there.
Gotcha. And let's move on to data breaches. This is our last of the four examples. Let's talk about data breaches and the impact that they can have, not only on the business, but really on their reputation as well.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be a company in charge of security and be in charge of security or in charge of holding people's information and have a data breach. But we see it all the time. And I tell small businesses there are things you can do, but just remember there are companies that have $1 million IT departments that get hacked. You know, it's a rough world out there, and you have to trust as least amount of people as possible when it comes to access to your data. And you have to do everything that you can afford to do. You can keep spending money in IT till the cows come home, and still get hacked. You know, you still can have that person who works at the help desk that gives out a password, and that has nothing to do with technology. That has nothing to do with security. That has, that's just a person. 83% of the breaches are because a person was involved, and they got phished, or they got social engineered, or something happened along those directions, and they got access to the information. That's why if you don't have two-factor authentication on everything that you can have two-factor authentication on, you're crazy. Two-factor authentication is a pain in the neck because you have to have your phone, or you have to have something with you, but it can literally save your business because that hacker is not going to have that two-factor authentication with them.
There are legal consequences to data breaches too, aren't there?
Yes. And the state of Connecticut is unique in the fact that there's actually a state law that protects small businesses as long as you try to conform to the NIST standards, and you can show that your business is making an effort, to be compliant. And NIST is like the basic framework for cybersecurity, and that involves the whole plan: what you're using for antivirus, how you're protecting this, how you're protecting that. As long as you're conforming to that, and I'm not a lawyer, so you can go look up the statute yourself. But the thing is, there is a statute that protects small businesses from being put out of business by not, by a hacker breaking in and, let's say, them being sued for a breach.
Okay. It's so important for companies to build the public's trust when it comes to cybersecurity, but how do they do that when the hackers and the scammers just always seem to be one step ahead?
Can you say that again?
I said it's really important for companies to build the public's trust when it comes to their cybersecurity measures, but how do they do that when it seems like the hackers are always one step ahead?
Yeah, you know what? The same thing is with the viruses in the human body. There's always patient one, patient zero, and then it takes time to build a defense for it. But the thing is, there's a lot of cybersecurity defenses that cost zero, and they're just things that you should put in place. But I think to build trust, you have to make your security apparent to the customers. You know, like if somebody were to call into the bank and make some um, off the wall thing like, hey, can we transfer $3,000 from here to here? You would hope the bank would verify everything they could verify about you before making that happen. And that's the way that they can build trust, because people can see that you're caring about it and that you want that to happen. I have businesses that call me, and I'll get somebody make a request that just seems fishy or out of the way to me in the normal course of doing business with them. So I'll call the CEO, or I'll call the head of the company and find out, should this really be happening or not happening. Uh,
Voice verify is so important, especially with so many people working from home and not in the office and not face to face anymore.
yeah, and voice verify. Let me tell you, do not call the number on the email. Do not call the number that they left you in a voicemail. Do not, if you're looking to verify something that's super important, go to the company's actual website. And by the way, don't search for it, because I know CPAs that will actually search for a bank's website in Google. But if Google happens to place a false link in there ahead of the banks, they can even get drawn to another link that looks like the bank that you're trying to log into, and you won't get to log in. It'll say some kind of technical error, but you just gave the password to the hackers, and that's the first line. Now, in the financial world, most of them are geared in and they're using two-factor authentication, so they're not getting to the second part. But that's an example on how you can prevent doing something bad. Go to
Yeah.
Google, do a search, but don't call the number based on a Google search. Make sure you go up to the address bar, type the name of the website in, go to the right website.
Yeah, because those rich hackers, they can afford to pay for advertising on Google
Yep.
and get their website, their fake website, up to the top of your search bar,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And you can
So
hire some of these hacker groups. I wouldn't doubt that there's companies out there that might not be ethical and hire a hacking group to get ahead of another company.
Wow. Okay, common vulnerabilities. What are those? Weak passwords, unpatched software.
Yeah. Common vulnerabilities is not keeping your stuff up to date. It's probably the most common. It's gotten a lot better now that Microsoft by default does it. And it's really annoying because Microsoft really punishes you by turning off your computer eventually and forcing you to update. And that just covers the operating system. But, you should update as many things as you can as they come out, whether it's a driver update or whether it's a computer update, or whether it's antivirus software. A lot of people will not update their subscription if they see it come due. Maybe they'll put it off or not update it, or they don't put things on autopilot so that it's just scanning the system all day long. Or maybe you're using a laptop and you shut the laptop off every night and you think that's good, but when you're shutting the laptop off, the antivirus software usually does its scans in the middle of the night when you're sleeping. So I tell people leave their laptops on, leave them plugged in, put the screensaver on, and that way that Windows can do its job in the background while you're not doing anything.
Okay. So we
You
talked
can
about,
you can also make sure that you have a firewall. There's talk of VPNs. You can VPN tunnel into work, which will keep you a lot safer, as opposed to not doing that. If you have a VPN tunnel and you're granted that from a business, that VPN tunnel can be filtered and they can virus scan the traffic that goes across it.
so we've kind of moved on from the examples and the ways that cyber criminals are targeting businesses. So the next step is creating a plan to protect our data. A reminder, if you have any questions about the first segment, please put it in the chat and we'll stop and we'll answer them. But Rich, what steps do business owners and their employees need to take to avoid some of the examples that you just gave us?
Talk to their employees and make them realize that they are the first line of defense. They are the ones that are going to stop a hacker or make a hacker have the right amount of access to get in. Tell people that, train them. If it seems too good to be true, or it seems like it's something that would not happen during the normal course of events, just stop and think about it. Don't just go ahead and do it, or just say, oh, it seems simple, and pass along the email to somebody else. You get something bizarre that comes in your inbox, or you're not sure what to do, the worst thing to do is to not let somebody else know about it. If you see something that comes in and you're an organization that has 50 people in it, maybe the other 49 people got the same email too.
Mm.
And somebody might click on it, or somebody might do something or take an action based on it. Somebody needs to speak out and bring it up so that way somebody can do something about it.
You talked about double checking the URL to make sure it's not a fake website. You also want to double check the email address that supposedly, potentially phony email is coming from.
Yeah, usually they can spoof the display name, and the display name is the part of the email address where it says your name, Kristen Johnson. But I'll tell you that email is just like postal mail. You get out an envelope, you write down. I'll get an envelope right now, and I'll write down Kristen Johnson, and I'll write your return address on it, and then I'll stick some piece of paper in there, write some stuff you'd never send to anybody, and I'll send it to the local police department. Now the local police department gets that envelope, they open it up and they go, oh my God, Kristen Johnson sent me something that's really awful. We're going to go find her because here's her return address. And they go and they find you, but you never sent the message. That's exactly what can happen every day. Somebody can write their email, their display name on there, make it look like it came from you. And even if you reply back to it, that reply goes back to you, even though you never sent it. So it is exactly like real postal email. There are certain things your IT department can do to make you receive less spam. You get a good spam filter. You can utilize DKIM, and these are things that I expect not the average person to know about, but the IT departments that you deal with should know about it. You can add a DKIM record, which will make your email more authentic, and you can add a DMARC record, which will help with spooling, because basically a DMARC record says to the internet, hey, internet, if you want to send an email as bbb.com, you must be from these IP addresses or from these known servers. If it's not, refuse it. So if you have a properly made DMARC record, you could really save people a lot of aggravation from getting email from you that is not from you.
Interesting, interesting. You've mentioned multi-factor authentication a couple times throughout our conversation. Can you just go over what it is and why it works so well, why it's so pertinent to being
Oh,
part of your plan?
it's great because you have to have whatever method of multi-factor that you opt for, a text message, an authenticator. An authenticator is something like Google Authenticator, where you can just get a QR code. It'll send you a code that stays with you. Only you have that with you. And the authenticator is probably even better than text messages because cell phones can be cloned and maybe somebody else can get that text message. So if I had a choice between a text message and an authenticator, I would probably use that. So you log into a website, you put your email address in, or you put your login name in, and then it comes up and says, asks you for your code from your authenticator, or it sends you a text message. But bare minimum, any website that has personal information or banking information or anything confidential or anything that you wouldn't want to get out to the public, I would use websites that have two-factor authentication. I would stay away from websites that don't offer two-factor authentication.
Okay, very good. So businesses need to not only put measures in place to prevent a cyber attack, but also have a plan in case it happens. So let's
Yeah,
talk about that. The initial response to a cyber attack. What does this plan need to look like?
well, the plan needs to be like an action plan. Each IT department is going to be different with what they have in place because hopefully they have things in place to prevent it or things in place to remediate it if it happens. If they have an EDR or an MDR product that can help them recover faster from a ransomware attack. But at the bare minimum, I would think if you get in the morning and you see that on the screen, you want to take the network cable out of your computer and prevent access to the other computers on the network from your computer, and you want to probably have all the computers off the network so that the damage can stop spreading through the network, because ransomware will infect one target and then usually go around and try to affect anything that it has access to. So you can walk in and literally have everything be down, one machine be down, or in a segmented network you only have part of the machines that are down. So that's one. Number two is you should have a good backup and be prepared to launch that backup. There are several companies out there, varying expense. Cheap backup is better than no backup, but cheap backup takes longer to recover from. So the bigger business you are and the more you rely on that data, the more you need to consider how much you're willing to spend as we'll call it backup insurance, because the better the backup, if you go to something like Datto or Kaseya, you can actually do a backup that won't get hit with ransomware so that you can know that if you did, you can actually launch the backup, not restore it, and actually run it from a device. So I know that in a world where a Datto appliance exists on a network, you can have a server get hit with ransomware or even lose a power supply. And in the meantime, while that's being dealt with, you can boot the last backup and actually run your business while everything is being remediated. And you don't skip a beat. Maybe you lose 30 minutes or an hour while you're redirecting traffic.
This comprehensive backup plan really shouldn't be sitting inside your building. When we talked before, even if you don't think a bad actor is going to threaten you, there's other threats out there outside of a cyber attack, a hurricane, a fire. This is really a continuity plan for anything that could affect your business, correct?
Yes. I mean, my favorite conversation is to have with like somebody who's worried about being HIPAA compliant or something like that. And you walk into, let's say, a dentist's office and you see their computers and they have everything, but they don't have an alarm for the building. So my first thing is like, hey, why do I have to hack in? I'll just walk in and take everything. Because hacking doesn't have to be by technology. It can be, it's physical security as well. If you have your server in the middle of the office and 20 people have access to it and you don't have an alarm on the building and you don't lock the back door, you have more to worry about than just the cyber thieves that are around.
Really good point.
Your backup should be off-prem, even if it's a backup for the backup and you have local backup and you have this off-site backup, because you can have a fire, you can have theft, you can have any kind of natural disaster happen and need to have access to that data. And the scenario I was talking about with data or Kaseya, what makes that a great thing and also a more expensive backup than just cloud backup is that the recovery time is less. What kills most small businesses in terms of ransomware or a major problem like a hurricane or like fire or something like that, what causes the most problem is how long does it take them to get back into business?
Mhm.
And a lot of businesses fail because they can't get back into business fast enough to actually stay in business.
So when you're creating this plan, you not only need to think about how much you have to lose, but how long is it going to take you to get back in business making money again?
Yeah, it's a continuity plan. As time goes on, insurance companies that sell cybersecurity and stuff like that, they don't want to pay claims. Their insurance forms are getting harder and harder because they want you to have all these things in place, and they want you to have a continuity plan. They want you to think about cybersecurity, and they want you to have antivirus and everything in the way so that um, if they have to pay a claim, it wasn't because you didn't have all the doors locked. The locks keep honest people out, and that saying applies to cybersecurity too. And and if you're a harder lock, then odds are maybe they move on past you to somebody else who's not.
Now, this conversation is particularly important for small businesses who may not have the resources to recover because according to the National Cybersecurity Alliance, 60% of small businesses fail within 6 months after, unfortunately, being cyber attacked. After a cyber attack, 60% of small businesses will fail within 6 months.
Yeah,
So
I would
it's
say
better
if you
to be prepared and have
yeah,
that.
I would say if your continuity plan doesn't have you up in business, within a couple of days at least, it's a bad continuity plan. You know, the you're absolutely right. Read the same statistics, and it's horrifying.
So let's talk about recovering from a cyber attack now. First is analyzing the breach.
Yep. Sometimes the first thing that people want to do is maybe you analyze it as you're going along, but the first thing that people have to do is get their hands on what's infected, what has to happen to remediate it. And by that I mean erase the computers, remove the ransomware. There are some ransomware's been around for such a long time. There are some ransomwares that government agencies have already broken the code. Some of these ransomwares can be taken off, which is identify what type of ransomware it is first, because sometimes there's a tool out there that'll let you unencrypt it. Sometimes hackers have what they call white hats, which are good hackers, have posted how to fix these things. So um, you look and you find out what the damage is and what the fastest route to get the customer back in business is. Maybe the fastest route is they have a Datto appliance or they have a Kaseya appliance or one of the other backup hardware, software um, things that are out there right now that get them back in business quick. The analysis might happen afterwards, not up front. you know uh
Okay,
it,
but you do need to monitor for lingering threats while you're going through this process,
oh
correct?
yeah, well, that's more of making sure that you know everything that got hit and you take it offline, so that way you can clean it or do whatever you have to do and remediate it, or load a new machine and get it up and running again, and then get it back in service and get everything back up and running. And then obviously got through somehow. you know
Mhm.
In some cases, you may never know how. It could be as like I said, 83% of these things are insider. Could be somebody with a flash drive that came in and brought the virus in from their house unknowingly, you know, or knowingly. You could have employees who are, not happy, and maybe they're looking for a way to get even. So you can have that kind of attack, and that's different. Maybe it's not ransomware, but maybe it's a little worse.
Yeah, right. And then some other post-attack measures that you recommend.
Oh, post attack. I mean, if you have cybersecurity, you should contact your insurance carrier. A lot of these insurance companies will have not remediation teams, but they'll have their own IT people that will want to get involved with it and see how the process is going, learn what happened, and sometimes they can help out.
Do you
But
recommend conducting a forensic investigation?
depends on how big you
About
are.
that.
Depends on how big you are. A
Okay.
forensic investigation, a mom and pop probably not going to end up going down that road.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying you may never find out what the initial cause was. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you won't. But if you take a lot of the precautions, like I said, nobody's perfect, and there are companies with $1 million IT departments that still get hacked, banks, everything else. So you do all that you can do. You try to conform to the NIST framework. The state of Connecticut, we talked earlier about if we send out an email after this or something like that, or people want, we can send them some links that they can go to that are safe links. And UConn has a cybersecurity webinar they did last year. There's a wonderful, I don't know if she's a professor or just works from UConn, but she is super knowledgeable. She has a load of resources that are not even, they don't cost anything, just a load of resources that security things that you can do that don't cost anything, and low cost security things you can do to increase your security posture when it comes to ransomware, or it comes to having an event.
Okay. Okay. But it sounds like the most important thing you can really do is to strengthen your network and those system defenses so it doesn't happen again.
And train your employees not to just go ahead and do whatever, even if it comes from the president of the company, and the president of the company says, hey, can you wire $100,000 to this address? And the person that normally gets the checks goes, wait a minute, Chuck never says send $100,000 to anybody. Why is he all of a sudden asking me to wire money to a certain company? That's an easy one to fix. And I know an actual person who was about to fall prey to it and send $1 million to a company in India.
Wow. Wow. The stories you have are just amazing. And it really kind of hits home that this isn't just happening somewhere. It's happening here in Connecticut. Like it's small
Happening here. It's
businesses,
happening.
medium-sized businesses.
I feel bad because a lot of people will say I'm a doomsdayer because I constantly talk about security, and I'm not. I'm just trying to protect people, because I see people that come into the store who have given up crypto because they believe the person on the phone they were talking to was a Microsoft rep, and the only way they could get their computer fixed is if they ran down to the local convenience store with a Bitcoin ATM and deposit money into their account.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft's never going to ask you that,
Yeah.
no, not even the IRS is going to call you up and tell you to go to Walmart and buy gift cards. Um, the way that hackers make money on gift cards, because people go, oh, how do they make money on gift cards? Well, they make money because they buy items and then sell those items.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically how they do it. And one of the common ways that people gain trust is, they'll contact you via Instagram or Facebook, and they'll talk to you for a little while, and then all of a sudden they have a problem and ask you to send them a gift card.
Right.
And I know people that they're smart people, and they fell for it. They go buy $400 in Apple iTunes cards and send them to whoever, and then that person disappears or keeps asking them for more and more until the person finally gets tired of sending the money.
Yeah, we've had people from all walks of life, doctors and teachers, report to BBB Scam Tracker about these various scams that you're bringing up. Okay, back to the business continuity and disaster recovery. So you say have a disaster plan, ensure minimal downtime, and best practices. Tell me about that.
I would say forget the disaster plan. Have a continuity plan. Have
Okay.
Plan on the fact that you're going to have a disaster. And if you plan that way, if you plan it, it usually doesn't happen. And if it does happen, you already know what the steps you're going to take are. I walk in one day, my computer's locked up. There's a message on the screen. What's the first move I make? Do I call IT? Do I call the president of the company? Do I ignore it and just continue on with my day? Those are the conversations that need to happen. Okay, we got hit with ransomware. We lost all of our data. What do we have to do first? How do we get back in business? Because the business owner is going to care about getting back in business. It's the IT people and the accounting department and everybody else that's going to worry about all the other repercussions of whether they have to notify their cybersecurity insurance company, whether that company has to send out notices required by law to other, to people, information that possibly is at risk. All that kind of stuff has to happen. But the thing is, develop a continuity plan, figure out um, how how you could make that as little time as possible, given different scenarios, a cybersecurity threat, a physical threat. And then I've talked to customers, large manufacturing customers, who at first turned down spending thousands and thousands of dollars on continuity, and then you have their payroll department figure out how much money they lose per hour on the shop floor, and then they realize that during a day they could lose $100,000. Well, guess what? Now the IT department has a budget, not $100,000, but they know that they have to protect against that, because who wants to lose $100,000 in a day, or who wants to lose 100% of their income while things are down?
Yeah, that's very scary. And that really puts it into perspective. We talked earlier about who gets access to certain sensitive information within the company, but you say take it a step further. Besides that, you should actually test your employees' readiness and whether or not they may fall for one of these attacks.
Yeah, there are plenty of like KnowBe4 is a good one, where they can have phishing attacks sent to them that are safe. Nothing's really going to happen, but you get a report card on your employees' cybersecurity awareness based upon the type of emails that were sent out and the amount of employees that took the bait and decided to click the link or decided to go a step further. And you constantly have that going out to your employees so that what their awareness level is. And the bigger the company, the more they can afford it. But even small companies can afford a little bit of that kind of protection.
And then there are also legal and compliance considerations, even reporting requirements after, I'm assuming, a data breach.
Oh yeah, it depends on the company and what they're doing. Like certainly like a financial planner or something like that is going to have SEC requirements and different government bodies that they're going to have to notify in case they have that kind of thing. And maybe when you're putting together the continuity plan, they put together a call list of the people that have to get notified.
And that's a good idea. That way you don't even have to think about it. You've already done the research
Yep.
ahead of time.
Yep. It's going to be a lot easier for a bigger company, but if you're a smaller company, the reverse is true. It's going to have a major impact on a smaller company, and it'll have an impact on a big company, but sometimes big companies will have the resources to deal with it. So there are a lot of low cost options, a lot of simple stupid things that can be done that are usually not done, that can help prevent you from falling prey to being a victim. And I run into people that will tell me, oh, we're just a small place and we don't really have that much data. And I go back to my original thing and I go, good, unplug your computer and let me know how long you go. Or unplug your computer, put a brand new one up and start from day one. And then all of a sudden they go, oh, where are my spreadsheets? Oh, where's my QuickBooks? Where's where's this stuff? Or even if they're all cloud-based and they think they're covered because their data is in the cloud, oh, I lost my passwords. I lost my access to the cloud. A lot of things happen like that. And just because you move your company to the cloud doesn't take away any responsibility that you have to be properly protected, because they have things like keyloggers. You can get a keylogger on your system and you're happily going to NetSuite and putting in your password, or QuickBooks Online, putting in your password. And in the meantime, some keylogger is sending all the things you type to a hacker so they can be offsite and they can access your cloud resources. And in most cases, like in Office 365 or a lot of the cloud-based services, they do the best they can to keep the system up. They have their own backups and stuff. But if you ever read any of those end user license agreements, they don't take any responsibility for the data. If for some reason a big target like that gets hit and they lose your data, you're the one who lost. So even if you have cloud-based things like Office 365, they have cloud-based backup now. You can go to Datto or you can go to Kaseya, or there's like probably 20 other ones that you can go to and actually back up your cloud data from Office 365 to somewhere else. And you might even have to do that for compliance reasons, like a government place might have to have Office 365 being backed up so that for compliance reasons, if something happened to their tenant, they could go back to their backup and pull up that information.
We're running out of time, but we want to talk about some proactive cybersecurity measures that you can take as well, like security audits. We've already talked about MFA, so we don't have to review that again, but talk to me about security audits.
I would have I would at the minimum talk to who's ever doing your computer work, whether it's a company or whether it's a person or whether you have a department, and have them tell you what they're doing to protect you. And at the minimum, talk about spam and whether you have any spam filtering. Talk about whether you have any kind of proactive training. We've talked about no before. Talk about what they have for antivirus and what level it is. You know, a regular basic antivirus is not the answer anymore. You need something like an endpoint detection and response system or a managed detection and response system. And the higher you go, the better the recovery. And sometimes for a small business, you can buy an EDR or an MDR solution, which is very powerful to get you back to working again at a very low cost, because it's on a per user basis, and a smaller company is going to have a smaller amount of users. So at the minimum, you talk about virus protection, you talk about what you have for firewalls, you talk about to your IT department what they have in place for backups, because if you don't have backups, that's no good either. And companies should look at where their data is being stored, because in some companies they may have a server, it may be being backed up, but they might do QuickBooks on a workstation and not even realize it. And their QuickBooks file lives on somebody's desktop, and that desktop never gets backed up.
Okay.
And there are also stakeholders that should make sure their data is being backed up. You can buy cloud backup pretty cheap, or you can use OneDrive that's built into Office 365 to back up some workstations from your computer to the cloud, because you don't want to lose your documents. You don't want to lose your things that are on your computer. And if you have it on your computer and you have it in the cloud, you have a backup. If you only have it on a flash drive, because a lot of people used to come in and say, oh, I have all my stuff on this flash drive. Well, guess what? If they lose the flash drive, it's not a backup. If it's a copy of what they have, it's a backup.
Okay, we only have a couple more minutes. What are some of the technological solutions for prevention? What are some of the things that we can really harness right now to prevent these threats?
Well, make sure you have if you're running a business, make sure you have a good firewall. SonicWall, Meraki, any of the top tier stuff. There was a lot of open source firewalls out there that IT guys like to use, but open source firewalls are you have to really know how to use them, and they're not backed by a company specifically. So you want a company like Cisco, or you want a company like SonicWall. So they're producing cybersecurity updates all the time. And they're relatively, and I mean relatively, because none of them are super easy to use, but your IT department should be able to put them in, or your IT guy should be able to put them in, and they will offer some frontline protection to your network, because the firewall's at the head of your network. So it's going to be able to do packet inspection and look at things coming into the network and potentially stop something there. You have to have a layered approach though. So you got your firewall in place. You need a good antivirus at a minimum. Thanks to Microsoft, one of the good things they did is Windows Defender comes on every PC now with Windows 10 and Windows 11. Make sure it's on, make sure the definitions are up to date, make sure if there's any security warnings in Windows, address them, because most of them are click here to fix it. And the Windows Defender will fix itself. That's at a minimum. I always suggest going a little further. There's antivirus software from Symantec. There's antivirus software from McAfee. Then you get into the world of EDRs, where you have SentinelOne, you have Malwarebytes endpoint protection, and you get into things like where not only can you be protecting against antivirus, you're looking at malware, and an EDR solution can offer checkpoints where you might be able to go back to before the ransomware started. Managed detection and response, even for small businesses, there are some solutions out there like Blackpoint Cyber, Malwarebytes has an MDR solution, and some other companies that do have a small price compared to what some of the large companies are paying but they have an active 24/7 security operations team looking at your network. And if they see something go down, like on the weekend when you're not there, they can go and try and shut it down right there when it happens. So that way the damage is very little and the mitigation or restoring or getting things back up and running is a very limited scope.
Okay, you are an encyclopedia of information, cybersecurity information. If you could, what is the most important tool businesses need to equip themselves to combat the threats that we've been discussing this last hour?
Don't trust anyone. Verify everything and make sure that you have all these things in place because it's not any one thing, you know. Like I said, you know, we've seen people with everything get hit, and it's somebody that did something stupid inside, you know, like they bought Microsoft Office for $23. You know, it's not going to happen. If you're buying Microsoft Office for $23, it's not from Microsoft, or it's not with some other kind of hitch attached to it. You know, they don't think that you're going to figure out something that companies like Walmart haven't figured out.
Okay. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention BBB's Scam Survivor Toolkit. This is for consumers and businesses. You can actually go to bbb.org/scam tracker and click on the Scam Survivors Toolkit and say you're a business, and it will go through some action plans. A lot of it probably mirrors what Rich just told us in the last hour, but it'll take you step by step of what you need to do to recover. And always report a scam to BBB Scam Tracker. Let us know what's happening. That's the best way we can let the public know what's going on, let other businesses know and inform them so that they are aware that they may be the next target of a scam. It's anonymous and it's free, and you can go to bbb.org/scam tracker and let people know what is happening in the business world. Also, if you go to bbb.org/all/business-scams, we've got a full page dedicated to some of the trending scams out there. This is just a small example of the articles that we have on there. Everything from that's not your boss texting you to directory scams, healthcare cons during open enrollment. So definitely something to check out as well. And if you do lose money to a scam or to a hacker, go to BBB or go to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. That's ic3.gov. The FBI goes after these people all over the world and tries to get money back. So definitely report it to ic3.gov. I know we're running out of time, but if you want to take your phone and grab this QR code, you can sign up for our consumer scam alerts. 2 to 4 times a month, we'll send you an email about either a trending scam or a cyclical scam, something that we see that a lot of people are being targeted by at the time, just so that you're aware of what's out there, because we know business owners are also consumers. So we want to make sure that you are up to date on the scams that are targeting your community. We are going to be sending this webinar out. We recorded it today, and so we'll be sending you a link. And as Rich said, we're going to include some other resources that he was mentioning earlier, so that you will have his contact information. You can revisit our conversation today, and then you can also check out some of the other free resources that he has. I don't see any questions, but I'll give it another minute if someone wants to add a question to the chat. And Rich, do you have anything else that you want to add before we say goodbye to everyone today?
Yes, I do want to say IT guys are like or girls. And by the way, there are some really great women in IT. So my niece is one who ended up going for cybersecurity. She's working for a bank right now, and she's fantastic. She's up on all this stuff. But IT professionals are like Ford and Chevy. They have their favorites. They have things they like to do. So I don't want to disparage anything that your IT guy might be doing or your IT woman might be doing. You know what? If they're doing something, it's a step in the right direction. Hopefully they're hitting all the points I talked about. And I think most cyber professionals or most IT people are aware of the basics of things that have to go on. I would say look at the government website, look up NIST and see what NIST is all about and use that as a framework in your business. If you could check off all the boxes in NIST, that's powerful. NIST is a really good framework of the things you should be doing in your business when it comes to cybersecurity. And there are other frameworks like SOC 2 and on and on and on that you might have to have specific certifications, whether you do business with the state or you do business with the federal government or any of the federal governments like the Army, the Navy, things like that, that you might have to comply with to be in business. But NIST is a great way to start. and by all means, follow what your IT person says. But IT people are Ford and Chevy, but we're also like doctors too. If you're not happy or you don't agree, get a second opinion, and that will help you. And most of the times it'll just solidify what you don't believe already. So.
Well, Rich, we thank you again for providing this very critical information to our accredited businesses. And we thank those businesses for joining us today and for taking their cybersecurity seriously, their safety, their employees, financial safety seriously as well, and for caring about their customers. So thank you for being with us. Rich, thank you for joining us. And that wraps it up. I don't see any questions. So everyone have a great afternoon, and hope you get out and enjoy this weather.
Thank you, Kristen, and the man behind the scenes, Matt. Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Take care.
Bye.